Сайн байцгаана өрхөн үзэгчтэй манай Syndicate ярилцлага нэвтрүүлгийн манай ээлж шин дугаар эхэлж байна. Энэхүү дугаартаа би бас маш эрхэм зочныг урьлаа. Энэхүү маань нэгдсэн үндэсний байгууллагын Монгол төсвөрийн төлөөлөгч ноён Тапан Мишра хүрэлцэн ирсэн байна. За ингээд эхний асуултаа би тавья. Thank you very much for accepting my invitation to be my guest in the Syndicate Talk.
Sambano, good morning. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure and privilege to be talking to you, Ganzorik. And Syndicate Talk is a very well-watched interview series, and I'm privileged to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I have lots of questions from you, since you are the very, very important man in Mongolia too. And as I know, the first question is, I know there are more than 20 United Nations organizations, agencies such as food, specialized in children's rights, human rights, food, labor, IT, health and culture, etc. Please explain how does this system work together, and are you the number one boss?
Thank you, Ganzorik. I don't consider myself a boss, but I'm the overall coordinator. I am the United Nations resident coordinator, and I report to the United Nations Secretary General in New York as my ultimate boss. And therefore, my role is to coordinate the whole UN system in terms of its planning, its operations, of programming and support to the beneficiaries and the government through the government. So, yes, you're right that there are more than 20 agencies that are working for the UN in Mongolia. Very accurate number is 23. Oh. So we have signed a United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework for 5-year strategy to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals towards Mongolia's Vision 2050 longer-term goals. And this 5-year strategy has been signed with the government along with 23 UN agencies. And they're committed to make their contributions in terms of the development plans through joint work plans towards achieving these strategies, which I'll talk about in more detail if you want to.
Oh, that's the huge work in terms of the scale and the scope.
Yeah.
And actually, since when United Nations opened its office in Mongolia, and also what are the greatest achievements so far?
That's a very good question. Mongolia joined the United Nations on the 27th of October, 1961. So it's more than 60 years now that Mongolia has become a member of the United Nations. And the good thing is that Mongolia's joining membership of the United Nations has given a new identity to Mongolia, which was under the shadow of socialist countries before. Yes. And although it is independent from the 1920s, but its identity of being a strong voice of its own among the multilateral countries in the world on a world stage came much more enhanced from 1961 when it joined the United Nations. So that's the big thing. And we celebrated the 60th anniversary with the auspices of the President in 2021, the 60 years. In terms of each agency, UNDP, UNICEF, FAO, all have had different times that they opened the offices, right? So this year, Mongolia is celebrating 50 years of joining FAO.
Okay.
Similarly, there are different organizations which have had different times that they started. But currently in Mongolia, we have 10 organizations present in the country and 13 who are supporting from outside.
The non-residents.
Non-resident.
Okay.
So 10 resident and 13 non-resident countries. So I may also talk a little bit about what do these agencies do.
Yes, please.
Right? So, the goal of the United Nations is to support inclusive and sustainable development, to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 goals that the world has agreed. In 2015, September, they came together. And as you know that previously we had the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals. There were 8 goals that the world had agreed in 2000 for 15 years. It was a great lesson learned that yes, these goals do unify the world together to work on common goals and aspirations. And therefore, I think building on those 8 goals that of MDGs and learning lessons from the good work that was done there, there was a lot more to elaborate on that. And therefore, in 2015, the 193 countries came together and signed their commitment towards the 17 goals of the SDGs. In Mongolia, 16 goals are more relevant. Goal number 14, which is life underwater, is not as relevant as the because we are a landlocked country with limited water resources, except for the huge Hufskul Nur, which holds 70% of Mongolia's freshwater reserves. So we have been working on that. And in Mongolia, each of the agencies, whether it's UNDP, which is a broader development agenda, UNICEF, which is working on the focus of children and children's rights, UNFPA, which works on population and youth and sexual reproductive rights of people, and we have FAO, which works on food and agriculture. We have WHO, which is the lead on health, ILO on labor, IOM on migration, UN Habitat on urbanization, and UNHCR on refugees. So we have these agencies.
Every sector.
So we are trying to make as comprehensive and as extensive support we can provide to the government to help the people in every realm in achieving their SDGs.
So we have been, receiving lots of the technical and financial assistance from United Nations organizations and agencies for last decades. But also I would like to ask, how do you see the Mongolia's contribution back to United Nations?
That's a good question. See, Mongolia has been a country which has huge amount of potential to contribute. We are a very mineral-rich and resource-rich country. The 1.5 million square kilometers of land, 260 of Nani Gerel, with only 3.45 million people, but 71 million livestock. So it's a very resource-rich country. What it has contributed to the United Nations primarily is its legacy of the brave Mongolian spirit through peacekeeping. UN peacekeeping perhaps has been one of the biggest contributions that Mongolia has made in terms of standing up and supporting all those challenge crisis countries where peacekeeping forces have needed to work in very difficult circumstances, and Mongolian peacekeepers, both men and women, have been outstanding in their not only the military or police activities, but also in terms of how they've engaged with the community. Their personalities and their behavior has received a lot of appreciation and a lot of acknowledgement. So Mongolia stands out as a country perhaps as one of the highest per capita representation in the UN peacekeeping forces in the world. And they've served in very difficult countries, including Afghanistan, Sudan, South Sudan, Congo, Yemen, and different countries where conflicts have been very high, risks have been very high, and yet they have done an extremely valuable contribution there, standing and delivering on that. So that's one. Second is that Mongolia has been seen as a cradle of democracy in a very difficult geopolitical situation, especially here, and with very strong big neighbors like Russia on the north and China on the south, where there is economic dependence and other dependencies too, including energy and other needs, etc. Mongolia has become a beacon of hope that if you are determined to support democratic institutions, if you have a thriving democracy and a free market economy in a geopolitically challenged region, I think it's a great role model and example. The contributions Mongolia makes also in other ways through the UB dialogue, Ulaanbaatar dialogue has been holding on peace and security in the region. So I think the aspirations Mongolia has is to be a good role model, not only in the region but even globally. Mongolia has also led some good initiatives, including international forums. We have led from Mongolia in collaboration with the government 2 consecutive years of the global digital dialogue. So we've hosted it from Mongolia for the last 2 years consecutively. We've also been hosting, yesterday we completed for the second time, the second international forum for climate change and youth, engaging on climate change and youth. I saw it on the news, So I think these are great initiatives that we are doing, and this is a great role model. Mongolia has also stood up very strongly against denuclearization, non-proliferation, and standing up saying that we need to have a more safe and secure world. Safety, security, and peace is a strong message that Mongolia provides through that. It is also providing some good examples of achieving inclusive and sustainable development, including on the climate side. The initiative of the president on the Thirbum Moth, the Billion Tree Initiative, is a great, I think, a role model of how we can start a great movement in a country which is so challenged by of the land is desertified and land degradation because of the overpasturing by the livestock. We need to create the opportunities for trees to grow and develop in this country. On the northern side, we have such a huge frigid winters with the zoots coming regularly, and also other, including forest fires and other risks being there. I think Mongolia, in terms of climate action, is trying to be a good role model. In terms of some of the other priorities that Mongolia is working towards, I think they're showcasing that Mongolia, if we can bring together open and transparent systems of governance, of human rights. It's a great, also a contribution on human rights is that we are one of the pioneers in the region on putting a law on human rights defenders law.
Yes, that's the first time in Asia,
First
right?
time in Asia, in the region. And I think we've been complimented for that. And we stand on the aspect of democracy and human rights as a priority. So there are many, many good examples where Mongolia has been seen as a global hub. This year, we did a World Export Development Forum along with ITC, International Trade Center, in June.
Yeah.
You know, it's a global event where we're looking at export development, because Mongolia also has a huge potential which has not been realized. Unfortunately, Mongolia's exports are primarily in the raw material form. Most of it is in mineral, and even animal products like wool and cashmere are mostly exported as raw material to its neighbors. So somehow the potential to have value-added processing and more high-quality finished products being offered to the world, with the Mongolian rich heritage of its culture being demonstrated in those products. The rich nomadic culture has a huge, beautiful opportunity for Mongolia to blend high-quality, modern products and services with that traditional nomadic culture dimension. So we're losing some of that value-added, both economic values as well as opportunities for higher livelihood and higher employment for the youth.
Yes.
And a lot of the youth who don't find opportunities have to leave and look for other opportunities. So I think the whole movement that Mongolia can do in terms of moving from exporting raw materials to becoming a value-added processing country, including on digitalization, including on renewable energy, including on all high-quality products and services, there's a huge potential. But already Mongolia has been doing a good job, and I think the way ahead has a lot more opportunities in terms of growth in terms of economy, as well as opportunities for the youth and the population of demonstrating its value to the world through its products and services.
Great, thank you. My next question is, I'm quite curious to know about the UN structure, because as I remember, there wasn't this kind of UN resident coordinator position before.
Sure.
So then now this kind of the new position, again, it's in charge of responsible for more than 23 the agencies and organizations. I do understand. Is it only that kind of the structure for Mongolia, or globally you change this structure? And what's the advantage? How do you see the benefit of the new structure?
So this structure has not been changed by the UN. It has been demanded by the member states. So in 2018, in June, in the General Assembly, a resolution was passed.
I see.
As a part of the UN development system reform, to reform the UN. Earlier, there was a resident coordinator, but the resident coordinator was also the UNDP resident representative. Like in my previous
so kind of dual.
It's a dual role. And also the head of security, head of the humanitarian part. There are multiple roles the resident coordinator has to play. Like in my previous job in North Korea, in DPR Korea, I was the UNDP resident representative. I was the UN resident coordinator. I was also for some time the rep for UNFPA. So multiple roles.
In Mongolian, the double quote.
Correct, double quote. Yeah. So in 2018, the General Assembly, the member states passed a resolution saying that we need to have an independent and empowered resident coordinator who will be seen as a leader of the whole UN. Because other agencies may have seen earlier that maybe the resident coordinators also leading UNDP and maybe more supportive to UNDP than equal to them. So that's perhaps the reason why they felt that they need to have an independent and empowered resident coordinator. So as a part of the resolution, independent and empowered resident coordinators with a fully staffed office.
I see.
So with an economist, with a head of office, with a partnership, and so a full-fledged support office to do good quality analytical work and support work substantively to help the resident coordinator lead the whole UN in a very strategic...
It's not only for Mongolia.
It's for all the 131 countries where resident offices are there. So it's in 131 countries we have resident coordinators. And the role of the resident coordinator is to make sure that we have, again, the resident coordinators don't report to any agency. They report to the Secretary General through the Development Coordination Office. And they have also now the status of a head of a diplomatic mission. They're not only so head of the RC, the resident coordinator, is also not only international organization head. He's a head of he or she is a head of a diplomatic mission. So have the status of diplomatic mission because the resident coordinator is not responsible for any operation or programmatic activity. The role is very strategic and
policy making
at the level of policy making, of influencing government direction and policy, and bringing in all the agencies together to plan and to be able to help monitor and report and communicate the results that we are creating together. So the goal is more strategic, goal is more inclusive, and therefore independent and empowered. So to liaise with the heads of governments at the head of state level, the president, the prime minister, the speaker, with all the ministries together, and bring the whole UN together to determine the way forward, not working in silos that it was working before, where there was duplication or overlaps or gaps. So the job of the resident coordinator is to coordinate. Like the good example is in a music, in an orchestra.
The conductor.
The conductor. So he's the conductor who leads the whole team together towards the melody, towards the harmony that is going to be put together. So there is no cacophony. There is no somebody playing the drums separately, somebody playing the flute separately, or the morning chor separately. But to bring it all together and engage with all the donors, partners, the leadership of the government, civil society, media, academia, all stakeholders, bring them together towards a common agenda in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. So the purpose of the resident coordinators is to make the UN more fit for purpose. Fit for being able to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, where you are leading together in a more comprehensive and a cohesive manner.
Okay, got it. Very clear. So now ice breaking is finished. Now I try to ask some smart and intelligent questions. Okay, recently you launched that, I remember that you sent me that report, e-trade readiness assessment in Mongolia, as well as also you organized global digital dialogue. Recently took place in Mongolia, virtually. So what's the progress of digitalization and governance in Mongolia? What's the biggest challenge?
I think Mongolia has shown that being landlocked does not constrain you because you're not mind-locked. You have opportunities, and the digital space is limitless. There's no boundaries. It transverses across any boundaries together. So Mongolia, I think, started in 2019, the whole journey on digitalization with e-Mongolia being launched and the Digital Nation Strategy with that time it was called CETA. Now it's called the MDDC, the Ministry for Digital Development and Communication. And we have been working very closely with both CETA and MDDC from the very beginning to help them to look at their 6 pillars of the Digital Nation Strategy, how it aligns with the Secretary General's 8-pillar roadmap on global digitalization strategy. And it's very well aligned. Where Mongolia is currently, I think the e-Mongolia platform, I think I'm not very sure of the exact number of services, but more than 560 services are being offered through the e-Mongolia platform. I think what digitalization is going to do is it is going to create a very efficient, effective and transparent way of governing, of providing services to the people, whether it's the services of tax or benefits or filling up forms or licenses or visas. So I think all those services come to people, especially for Mongolia, it's very important that people sitting in bags and imugs and
remote areas,
far away, remote areas. But the connectivity is excellent. So I've been to all parts of Mongolia, including very remote areas in, say, Tisum in Zavkhan, on the border of where the temperature goes to minus 50 in the winter.
We met first in Arhanga,
in Chester Lake, I remember. So I have been very privileged to, in my last 4 years that I've been here, I have traveled a lot, and to see the people, the Malching, Nundilching, and the Imugs, Bags, and I've seen most of the countries, the beautiful Mongolia, and I found that the digital connectivity is very good. So during the COVID time, I think we also found that the e-learning, the education was being offered the platform. We've been working very closely with the Ministry for Education and Sciences to promote e-learning so that children don't lose out if they cannot go to school physically. That doesn't stop learning. So we've been working on that together with UNICEF, UNFPA and UNESCO to create those platforms during the COVID time. And we found even, like I went to a Setsaleg, if outside, I remember in one of the Sooms, and there was a lady who was a primary school teacher, and she was teaching children from the nearby Gers, helping them to learn too in different ways. And so I think there are ways that we have found that digitalization, not only for e-commerce and e-trade, and I'll come back to e-trade readiness a little bit, but I think the digital services available in Mongolia is quite well. Personally, I have never been to a bank for getting my services done. Everything is through e-banking. And I find that e-banking is very, very well established in Mongolia. I go to a small village, a Sum or a Bag, and I want to pay through my card or through my... It's very easy. So the enabling conditions are very good. So on the e-learning, on the e-Mongolia platform, the service is being delivered, number one. So that's great moving forward. I think they're also looking at the platform of e-business, is being launched to enable businesses to be more trade savvy and being able to do business online. The third part is the e-trade. So not only within Mongolia, but exporting to others. So I think that's where we are looking at the e-trade readiness. We have a UN agency, non-resident, which is supporting from outside as part of our cooperation framework signatory called UNCTAD, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. They're the lead agency on trade. They have done this e-trade readiness report. From last 2 years, we've been working together on that. And Mongolia is seen as a good example of how we have been bringing all stakeholders together to have a very open and transparent assessment of where we are, where are the things that we need to improve further to be able to be as efficient and effective in providing e-trade platforms, including on the legal framework, including on the digital signatures and other requirements that are there. So it's happening. So it will lead us there. And also, as I said to you, the World Trade Export Development Platform also.
Actually, that was my next question.
Sure.
So you guys recently organized this World Export Development Forum in Mongolia in June, right?
In June.
Yeah, just a couple of weeks ago. Then how do you see the Mongolia's economic development? And also, the biggest challenges, how to diversify our economy from the mining sector?
Ganzorik, I think this is a question that is extremely important for Mongolia because it will determine Mongolia's future. Mongolia has, as I said in the beginning, a very fortunate country. I think Ochirvan and all gods have been very kind to bless Mongolia with a lot of resources. But I think we need to move from being a resource-rich country which is exporting its minerals and other product services to only a few partners, especially our major partners, our neighbor in the south, which accounts for 85% of our exports and 60 to 70% of imports put together. And we've seen what that dependence does during the COVID pandemic when the borders were sealed. What impact it had on Mongolia's economy, because we are a small economy compared to China. So their exports percentage is a very small fraction compared to Mongolia's dependence for the exports to them. So in the World Export Development Forum, WEDF, which was led by the International Trade Center, ITC, one of the 23 agencies that are supporting Mongolia as a part of the cooperation framework, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Economy and Development, and the UN in Mongolia. Together we partnered to bring this forum together. And also we did something on the landlocked development country, LLDC. So the US chief for LLDC was also here.
Yeah.
We made a special focus on how to look at trade and export development for landlocked countries, challenges and issues and opportunities, how we can get there. So we combined the two. And I think where Mongolia has to move forward is the question that you pointed out on diversification of the economy. Now, today, as you see that large majority, 85% or more of our exports are raw materials. Our value-added processing is very limited. We are not, I think one of the reasons that people are saying, oh, our neighbor already has so much of infrastructure for processing, why should we waste money on that?
Yeah.
We don't have cheap labor, we don't have... So I think we have to look at the mindset of what is it that we need to... We have to define that space. Where is that added value most valuable? Whether it's in digitalization, whether it's through high-end quality products like cashmere and wool. Even cashmere, I'm told that more than 85% goes as raw material. And then some of it is brought back after some processing part. But why can't that processing be done here? So we have big companies like Gopi, Goya and others which are doing high-quality products and services. They're very popular around the world. But why can't we pull down the value chain down to the noodle-ching mulching, so that some of the processing can be done even at a rural level, so we can have more huduni hukjil, rural development, where they can have opportunities to have value-added processing at that level of washing and spinning the yarn and the wool and the cashmere, so that there can be opportunities for rural employment as well for people. So I think that's where, and also on tourism, I think Mongolia has been working on ecotourism, adventure tourism, cultural tourism. I think all that is a huge potential for Mongolia. So in the export part, and also I talked about Mongolia has potential to be an exporter of renewable or green energy. So those are things that are possible. So there is a possibility, but I think we need to be moving our mindset. The biggest change has to be in the mindset. We have to think as Mongol Chod, as Mongol people, that if we are selling only raw material and not adding value, I think we are not doing us good service in terms of the capability. Look at some of the Arab countries like UAE or Saudi Arabia. They had the oil resources, but they built on oil resources many other services, and those, because these are non-replenishable products, so they will end someday. But unless you build that capacity to create more value-added products and services, then dependence on raw material or availability of natural resources will be depleting those resources, and it'll create more trouble for the future. So we need to leverage the human capacity that Mongolians have. They're very educated. 98 or 99% education levels are very high.
Yes.
But we need to create that right match of what the market needs, the skills gaps that need to be bridged, and we need to create a situation where we are able to take forward the value-added processing and diversification of our products and services, which is more export-ready for the whole world.
So my next question is, I must ask you that about the climate change. All we know that Mongolia has already committed to the UN and other international organizations to reduce the emission by 27.2% by 2030. But still, unfortunately, quite a big community, not only in Mongolia, but also globally, who are against climate change, who do not believe in the climate change. And the question is climate change real?
Ganzorik, thank you for asking me the question. I think it's too late for asking that question because the evidence is in front of you. If you look at any news, look at what's happening, the forest fires happening in Canada. People are escaping and running away from the north. Look at the Hawaii Islands, Maui, burnt down. Greece, Europe, Asia, different parts of the world are burning because of the extreme heat. There were supposed to be the World Scouts Jamboree in South Korea. Had to be abandoned because of the heat. Yeah, it was cancelled. There are many, the floods in Pakistan and many parts of the world. These are strong signs of what is showing that the global warming is for real. This July was the hottest month ever recorded in human history. You can see that these are real issues that are happening because of the global warming. It's caused by the greenhouse gas emissions, GHG emissions, which are increasing. Temperatures are rising. sea levels are rising, our glaciers are melting down. This is real. It's scientifically, evidence is available. Even children understand that. Last 2 years in Mongolia, we have had the Climate Change and Youth International Forums. One has just been completed yesterday. And I think the children understand it very clearly, openly, not only why is it happening, but what needs to be done. So my appeal to those people who don't believe as yet is talk to the children, look at the scientific data, look at evidence, and let's talk. I think we should not become like ostriches in the sand, where we are putting our heads inside the sand thinking the wolf has gone away. The wolf is not going away. The challenge is even more, getting bigger and bigger. And unless we take action now. So this year, in November, on the 20th of November, we are going to have the Climate Ambition Summit, where all the heads of states will have to go back and make their commitments fresh to enhance their levels of commitments. So Mongolia made a commitment of 22.7, which is on the NDCs, the National Determined Contributions, and it also had a conditional aspiration of 27.2. But it's not talking about 27.2 anymore. We're still at 22.7. But I think we need to rethink and relook. We had recently the NDC partnership team which had come here. We were looking at how to review things together. And we will work closely with the government and the leadership to see how Mongolia can up its game, enhance its standards and its levels of commitment further on climate change. So it is real. We're also going to be hosting, Mongolia is hosting in 2026, the COPD, the Conference on Desertification, for prevention of desertification in 2026. So today I'm going to Dungobi along with the ministry and other colleagues from different related ministries together to look at how to prepare Mongolia's commitment towards not only for climate change, but how it impacts desertification and land degradation. So that's also we are looking. So I think we are taking action. We need to only make sure that we have a whole of society commitment, because climate change is not created by any one. There are all of us. And in Mongolia, there are two major contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, two major. One is agriculture sector, and the other is the energy sector. There are also some waste management sector as well as industry and transportation sectors also, but they are very small. The two major ones, 46 and 51%, are agriculture and energy. If we are able to deal with this together, we will be making a significant reduction in our greenhouse gases, and it's a global good. Although taking the whole world, our percentage of emission is very low because our population is only 3.45 million people. And we have a huge land mass, but per capita, our emissions are very high. So if we can look at that standard of per capita, we can make sure that we can really take good action or both adaptive action and mitigative action to overcome the challenges of including by leveraging renewable energy, by leveraging its waste products, by looking at the agriculture sector and the energy sector more carefully.
I learned that UN will host an SDG summit on September, coming just in a few weeks' time in New York, right? By the heads of the states of 193 nations. Then how do you prefer for this summit with the government? And actually, please tell me very straightforwardly, what's the biggest challenge to implement SDG in Mongolia?
Okay. Again, a very important question, Ganzorik, because I think for Mongolia, SDGs is important for the whole world, but even more important for Mongolia. And I'm saying that more because Mongolia also have a long-term vision, Vision 2050. And we have brought together the whole country to look at those three-phased, first 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years goals on that. The first 10 years is aligned to the SDGs fully. And again, it is more important for Mongolia because if Mongolia is able to achieve the SDGs, the credibility, the trust from the people of Mongolia and the people of the world who are waiting to invest in Mongolia will be higher. It is like if you have to reach Dornod, if you reach Hinti, it is showing progress that you are in the right direction. So if we are able to achieve the SDGs in the right way, it will bring confidence in the people of Mongolia and people of the world that yes, we can achieve 2050 and this is a country to invest. This is where we need to grow forward. So here's an opportunity. the next 7 years is a big testing time for Mongolia. Now, where are we and what are the challenges? Mongolia has just submitted in July its second VNR, or the Voluntary National Review, which looks at all the SDGs together. What are we doing well? What are not doing well? So we had a great analysis, and in preparation of the SDG summit, we are also culling out some of the accelerators, what will help us to move forward. So along with the leadership of the President of Mongolia, who will be going to New York for this SDG summit to make the commitments on behalf of the nation, and with the support and the leadership of the Ministry for Economy and Development and the other related ministries, we've had a series of stakeholder analysis of what are the accelerators. There are 11 accelerators we've looked at, which we need to focus on to move Mongolia forward in achieving SDGs towards its Vision 2050. Now, where we are currently is that we have had these stakeholder discussions. We are pulling it together, and in Mongolia, with the leadership of the Office of the President, with the other partners in the Ministry of Economy and Development, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and all the other ministries, and the UN together, and all other stakeholders, we are going to have a national SDG summit, a national SDG forum on the 7th of September, as a part of the preparation, because it is not only the government saying that, it has to be the whole of society. So when the head of state speaks at the United Nations on the 18th and 19th of September, the president will be speaking on behalf of a collective voice of the whole country together, of what we are committing, what are the national commitments which will take us to achieve the SDGs. So that's the preparation, and I think we have been complimented as a country which is being very inclusive and strategic in bringing the whole country together in looking at this whole SDGs, where we are, the review part of it, the indicators, the targets, where we are having gaps. What do we need to do? What will help us to accelerate together? And that will be presented in the summits that will be on 18th and 19th. So we are well prepared. I think the good news is that we are working all together
as a one team,
together with the leadership of the president and the government together, to bring the whole of the country and all. And we've had stakeholder discussions with the civil society, with the private sector, with academia, with the rural communities, with development partners, and with the government departments all together, as well as with the youth.
Plus media.
And the media. So we've been talking with all of them together to bring all the voices together towards achieving the SDGs. So we are in a good state there.
Before SDG, there was, as I remember, that Millennium Challenge goal. So do you think that goal is, completely, successfully completed or not yet? And now we are talking about SDG until 2030, yeah?
Right.
What would happen? What's your plan as an individual, as a representative of United Nations after 2030? Is we have again the new long or mid-term goal globally or locally?
As I was mentioning in the beginning of the interview, I talked about how the SDGs are built on the lessons learned from the MDGs, Millennium Development Goals. Those were created in 2000 October, and they were relevant from 2001 to 2015. There were 8 goals and during the MDGs part. And Mongolia had also at that time talked about we need to have a 9th goal on governance. And that has a great contribution from Mongolia too. I think as a result in the SDGs now, the missing goal on governance is now in goal number 16 of SDGs on effective institutions and justice. So bringing that together. And some of the goals were too clustered together. So right now we have 17 goals which are more clearer, more accounted for through targets and indicators. So we have learned lessons from that. So it was a great framework to begin with. MDGs was the first time ever in the history of the UN and in the world that we brought all the countries together to agree on common goals. And that's where we got the commitment and to work on that. There have been some progress. We have not met those MDG goals fully, but that became a good lesson learned that yes, we need to work on these goals more. we need to segregate some of those indicators, targets, and the goals more clearly. We need to bring in the gaps which are not fully identified in those goals and expand it into 17 goals that the world agreed to. And I think now, and we have an enabling structure with the UNDS reform, with the UN system also being reformed, with the resident coordinator leading together all agencies, working clearly on a comprehensive planning process like the United Nations Development, UN SDCF, Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework. And I will tell you a little bit more because that's what's relevant for Mongolia. In the cooperation framework, which I mentioned to you, for the next 5 years, 2023 to 27, we have 3 big strategic priorities with 4 outcomes. The first strategic priority is on human development and people's well-being, which includes health, education, water, sanitation, hygiene, food security, social protection, and all the services that help improve people's lives. That's the first one. The second strategic priority is on 2 factors, economy and environment, but not economy at the cost of environment and environment at the cost of economy. Balancing together, we are calling it green, inclusive, and sustainable growth. And that's where we are trying to create the whole dimension of bringing the environment and the economy together in green development and green growth. The third strategic priority and the fourth outcome is around people-centered governance, rule of law, and human rights. Because the whole inclusive development is on the foundation of Hunirk, on human development. To make sure that the rights of people is fully preserved and respected and fulfilled. And therefore, inclusive and sustainable development can only happen on that foundation, and that's the front and center. So together, and the key of any development for any country is strongly relies on effective governance. In Mongolia, I think it's a much more transparent, people can talk about even corruption in everywhere openly, including now the leadership of the government or the Prime Minister and other in the parliament, discussions of laws on anti-corruption is coming very clearly. We have seen issues of the coal scandal or the education scandal or the SME scandal. We've seen all that happening. But I think the government is more open to discuss this openly, and I think the government is showing commitment towards building more efficiency, effectiveness, and transparency that will make the government, and digitalization will be a great enabler to bring those transparency, efficiency, and effectiveness. So governance is one big issue. Recently, we've been working with UN DESA, which is the Department for Economic and Social Affairs. They have a project office in Incheon called UN POG, UN Project Office on Governance. We've been engaging with them and as experts on governance with the National Academy of Governance and with the government to bring together of how to make governance more efficient and effective in Mongolia. So we are working on all these facets together. So our goal is to really use governance as the key to make sure that people's well-being and human development, as well as green, inclusive, and sustainable growth is happening, and human rights are protected and preserved. Gender equality is preserved. We are eradicating all the issues and challenges so that rule of law and access to justice is available to all. We are taking care of people, leaving no one behind. So that's the whole goal in moving forward.
That's very, very important. Thank you. There are the SDG awards, local and international one. Actually, our company applied for the international one because we worked with a couple of the Mongolian companies actually, implemented this kind of the commitments. And the local one, there are how many companies or individuals got this award, and anyone get the award from international level yet?
Ganzorik, awards are very good recognition. There are good incentive for people to work towards that. So last year in Mongolia, we did a SDG Open Day.
On the Sukhwatra Square.
Yes, on Sukhwatra Square on the 10th of September. We invited people to come over, and we had more than 5,000 people who came to this, and we had more than 100 stalls with organizations showcasing. So the whole purpose of that was to showcase what have we achieved, what have we done, what are the good achievements we've done, and what do we plan to do ahead. So to bring the whole country, because I don't think it's time to talk about what are SDGs. Time to say, how do we achieve SDGs? And that's what we've been doing. So it is a great, and therefore last year we also brought some of the lessons learned from the global awards to Mongolia, and we awarded based on a huge competition. We had many people who applied in Mongolia, and we selected 5 categories of people who were recognized through the awards. But it's not only the awards that matter. That I think we have been also able to encourage and incentivize all those people who are contributing to that. So in the SDG National Forum also, we are bringing people to talk about what are they doing. Various companies, including the Hum Bank, TDB and others who are other, Golom Bank, some of the other private sector companies who are also doing great work in terms of the contributing to SDGs, will be showcased. So we will try and do those awards locally. Unfortunately, at the global level, the competition is huge. 193 countries showcasing. I don't think we have won a single award as yet, but I'm happy to do our best to support our Mongolian companies and Mongolian countries, including yours, to see how can we really demonstrate the best contribution towards achieving SDGs. And not only your company, but all other companies. Through your interview, I can tell them, let's work together. Let's make SDGs happen, because I said SDGs is important for Mongolia even more than in any other country in the world, because we have a long way to go. If we have a long journey, we have to reach a critical milestone in due time to be able to see that we are going in the right direction. So certainly we will be happy to work with you on the awards and recognitions, but more importantly, to achieve the SDGs. That will be the biggest award for Mongolia.
Thank you. So I deliver your messages to the clients. The last question, so our time is almost up, and my favorite question. This is I would like to ask you, since you've been a couple of years in Mongolia already, and how do you define the Mongolian identity? If there is, if you can provide one single adjective in English, what word that would be?
That's a very difficult question. I know that I have been very charmed by the Mongolian spirit. Mongolia is a country, as I said, a huge landmass of 1.5 kilometer. Is a huge history, not only from Genghis Khan, who's the best known as almost conquered most of the part of the world, the biggest empire ever in terms of and what this the nuances of that history is, not only as a strong warrior who has been winning over enemies. In the book that Jack Weatherford has written about Genghis Khan and the making of the modern world, you can see the glimpses of how we have learned about trade and governance through the work is done. So that's one part of the history. The other part of history is the nomadic, the noodleching, the marching. You see the rich traditions that Mongolia has. And I think the spirit of Mongolia is powered by the free spirit of the nomadic life that they have. They have a free spirit, and they have a source of independence and freedom. And I think if I had to bring one word of identity, is that free nomadic spirit that drives Mongolia to achieve. And they're not afraid. As I said, in this geopolitical world with so many conflicts happening, last 100 years, you have maintained peace with big neighbors and with and you're opening friendship with other countries. Naramdal, so the friendship. So the spirit of that, we are not afraid, but we don't want to be, attacking anybody, or we want peace. So it's a spirit which is inspired by the nomadic history, by the rich cultural history. At the same time, it is a history, I think the influence of the religion, the Buddhism that's come here over the years has brought a lot of focus on peace and tranquility and safety and security. It's a country that is aspiring to be a good leader in showing that, we can have peace and safety and security, we can have harmony, we can have friendship, we can have third neighbor policies. So I think the identity is that free Mongolian spirit, which is rooted in nomadic past, which has learned a lot in the past and bringing in peace and harmony in the world.
Thank you so much, and thanks again for providing your valuable comments, and also sharing your thoughts and experience in Mongolia. And again, all the best for your work, and all the best for your big summit in New York very soon.
So Ganzorik, if I can say a last word.
Yes, sure.
I've been in Mongolia for 4 years now.
Already.
I think Mongol hilt mitku, Mongol soil, Mongol chod, Jokum mitten, Jokumoy kloklok, Mashik torte, Zurte, Sadgelte Mongol. And I am saying this from a fact that that I understand a little bit of the culture. I don't speak the language very well, but I have been to working in Zooms and Bags and IMAX, most places, and I connect with people at that level of individuals. And we are trying our best as the UN to serve the people of Mongolia in inclusive and sustainable development growth. I have one more year before I complete my my assignment here, my term here, and we are ready to work with the government of Mongolia, with all other partners, to really make a difference, to achieve the SDGs and beyond, so that every Mongolian citizen is able to live a life of improved conditions for themselves through employment, through environment, through basic human rights and all the facilities together. So we welcome all Mongolians to work closely together in making these development goals happen. So that's our commitment from the UN, and we look forward to working with not only the government but all of the stakeholders in making this happen. Санsak Nihusi, Amjil Husi.
Маш их баярлалаа.
Өдрийг сайхан өнгөрүүлээрэй.
Баярлалаа үзэгчдээ.